Well, hello, and a very warm welcome back to another week on the allotment. And you'll be aware, I'm sure, it's been 3 weeks since I posted. I've been busy. The family has been busy. Our house is now on the market. We've had a few viewings, but no real interest yet. And that's the problem, the timing is not good. The market is very suppressed, and of course with this lunatic government we've got now, it's expected that the markets, well, they already have reacted negatively and mortgage rates will go up. So yeah, our time is not great. But anyway, the house is on the market, and last weekend on the Saturday we got together with Carl and we went and viewed 4 properties in West Wales. Mixed results, it's fair to say. I don't wish to be impolite or rude, but when you go into some houses and you think, you're trying to sell this. Wow. Cool, we saw some sights. Having said that, we also saw what we thought was the dream property. 2 acres of beautiful land and a lovely house in a beautiful location. But of course we're not proceedable yet, so we may well lose that opportunity. Anyway, that's what it's all about, isn't it? It's the ups and downs of the housing market. We are new to it, so having been in military married quarters most of our married life, but it's all very exciting. Anyway, I won't say any more about that. As and when I have any news, you will be the 3rd or 4th to know. But on the plot, I have taken my eye off the ball. This project of ours to move to a piece of land is obviously, you won't be surprised to know it's taking up some of our time, and it's our priority. So the allotment's taken a back seat, but that doesn't mean I have neglected it. Far from it. But I've also made a purchase online. I have bought Charles Dowding's calendar of vegetable sowing dates for 2025. What a thoroughly useful calendar this is. Every month, I don't think there's anything in January, and he says, don't sow anything in January, wait, be patient. That'll be interesting for me. But yeah, it's a thoroughly useful piece of kit. I'm very pleased I've bought it. I can see that becoming a regular investment, and I would recommend it to you. What I find particularly useful is as you get towards July and August, he really ramps up the seed sowing business, and that's the bit I'm particularly interested in. Anyway, you're welcome along. Thanks for joining me. And without further ado, I'll stop my waffles and we'll have a little quick walk around the plot and see what I've been up to and what's changed since you were last here. Well, it's not really something I've done, but I just thought I'd start by commenting on how very pleased I am with my Brussels sprout crop this year. I don't know what's different. I suppose maybe it's the wet, cooler summer. They've not been short of moisture, but they are really sizing up lovely. We've already had several pickings, and they're very tasty and a good size, so very happy with that. I have mentioned it before, that this is the bed that I grew my peas in the summer, pea alderman, and by sheer accident I left the peas on the fencing to dry so that I could pick my own pea seeds for next year. But in the process of doing that, a lot of the pea seeds dropped to the ground and have germinated. And we've made a bit of a discovery. I've seen it so many times in different magazines and videos, etc. But we've been picking the pea shoots and having on salads instead of lettuce. The last lettuce I had was in the greenhouse, and they've now been picked. They're finished. So we have no more lettuce. But for the last month, I just nip out the tips of these pea plants and we chop them up. They go on the salad, like I say, instead of lettuce, and they are delicious. Really, really nice. I'm sure I haven't mentioned it, but we are being extremely lucky with the weather. We've had a very dry, warm couple of weeks. Autumn is proving to be a real boon this year. And the weather forecast for next week looks good as well. So really enjoying it, as are these peas. So yeah, thoroughly enjoying that, and if I can manage it, I'll do it again next year. But it's a crop for free. Been absolutely fantastic. And of course, I also managed to save a bag full of my own seeds for next year. So it's a win-win. Can recommend that. Well, down at the bottom end, this is a good example of how things get a bit messy in autumn on the plot. These beds have all had their crops removed, mostly butternuts and pumpkins, and they've all been mulched. I mentioned before this one, before I sowed my pumpkin seeds back in the spring, I put a really good heavy mulch of manure down, and over the summer with the black plastic over it, it's broken down beautifully and is now a very fine tilth of mulch. Over there, that's leaf mould. It's not very fine stuff, but it's a very thick dressing. That has worked. If I can bring you across the far bed over there, that's had various dressings of allotment compost, which has broken down. The wheelbarrow that had a couple of pumpkin plants in, that was sat not on my plot but on the adjacent empty plot, that's been emptied onto my raspberries over there, and it looks very good. And this bed has had a very thick mulch of more cow muck and is covered with plastic for the winter, and we'll see whether the winter breaks down the cow muck as effectively as the summer did. I doubt it will, but it all helps. And that's the last of that's a runner bean wigwam, and this week I picked off the dried runner bean pods and shelled them, and I've now saved my own runner bean seeds for next year. So it's all looking very good there. And on the plot, the story continues of emptying beds and mulching with whatever I have available. Talking of which, let's go and have a look at a bed further up the plot. Well, you can see from this leek bed, you know, when you're looking after two and a half plots, and you've got a busy working life and other things are going on, then things slip. I shouldn't have allowed it to happen, but it has. And the couch grass has got into the leek bed along with all the other weeds, and it's a right old mess. So what I did this week is I dug out half the bed, and I've tried to, you know, I've hoed and tried to get rid of some of the couch grass, but to do that you've got to dig. And then it's, you know, picking out the fine white roots. I don't have the patience or the inclination. So what I've done, as you can see, is I've put down a load of very thick cardboard from the garden centre, and I'm going to attempt with what I've got to cover that with compost, obviously from my own bays. It might be rough stuff, but it'll have to do. I haven't got it ready yet. At some point I'm going to dig out the rest. I probably harvested a dozen good leeks from that top end there, but you can see a lot of them have bolted. They're still very good leeks, and we've frozen a lot. I think Cheryl's going to use some this week in meals. But yeah, that's the sort of problem. Unless you're retired and you're on the plot permanently, they just, you know, some things have to give. So what I've done with that other end of the plot, the bed, I will do with this end at some point this week. You've just got to use whatever tools you've got at your disposal. Some beds have had a very thick mulch, and then you run out and you have to come up with other ideas. Staying with the good news, this was a bed of various brassicas that I sowed back in the summer, July, August I think. And it's been very successful. I don't know if you can see, I've cut out a broccoli or a calabrese there, but I have quite a few others. Again, I don't know if you can see it through the netting, but there's one there, there's one there, there's one there, and there's one there. Oh, and there's one there. So there's various calabrese heads that I can chop out, and I think I'll do that today, and then we'll have them tonight for dinner, and what we don't use tonight we'll freeze, or I'll have for my lunch during the week. I do like a bit of broccoli and hummus just to pick at for lunch. But you can see those leaves are yellowing, so quite what happens to them as we go into the winter, I'm not sure. It's a bit of an experiment. But I've got a whopping red cabbage there. Well, you know that I am always interested in and fascinated by facts. Fact is always stranger than fiction. And I heard something this week that I was really shocked at. And it was some people on, I think it was Talk TV or GB News, one or the other. I don't watch the mainstream media anymore. They are completely useless. You can't believe them. And they were talking about the housing crisis. Of course, if you drive around the UK, you know we don't have a housing crisis. They are putting up houses everywhere, and they have been for years. What we have is a population expansion crisis. Too many people coming in and not enough resources to go round. Anyway, I heard this fact. The percentage of land in the UK that now has housing on it is 1%. 1% of UK land has housing stock on it. The amount of land that has golf courses on it is 2%. We have double the amount of land used up by golf courses as we do housing. And there's all this, struggle and fight and argument about which land we should be building houses on. Well, it's blimmin' obvious to me. Build them on the golf courses. I couldn't believe that. I mean, obviously a golf course does take a lot of land. Do we need so many? I don't know. I don't know anything about golf. Never really been interested in it. Anyway, there's some other stuff I picked up this week. I watched one of Joe Rogan's podcasts. And if you don't know who Joe Rogan is, it's probably not of interest to you. But he was talking to two Americans. They're twins, a man and a woman. The man worked as a lobbyist for the food industry. And the woman is a doctor and a scientist. And, they happen to have joined forces because they're brother and sister. And they're, trying to affect change in America, which is almost impossible, like it is anywhere. But they were talking about the food industry. What happened was when the tobacco companies realised where tobacco was going, and it was that, they looked around for something else, and they looked at the food industry, and they've bought all these food manufacturing companies, and they're now doing the same with food that they did with tobacco, killing people. It was a fascinating talk, and Joe Rogan's very good at shutting up and listening. And these two talked about it, and they came up with some fascinating facts in no particular order, and they're not all to do with one specific subject, but I just thought as a group they were fascinating, so bear with me. To build a strong skeleton, children need to stress their bones with about 1 hour of physical activity every day. Now, when I was a nipper, schools did PE. We used to have games, we had a swimming pool, you went swimming. I'm not sure it was every day, but and you used to get the badges. I can remember you got, I think it was a 5 metre badge, a 10 metre badge, 25 metre badge, 50 metre badge. And I think I got up to 500 metres, a 500 metre badge. And it was only a small swimming pool, so you were spending most of your time turning around. The kids don't do any of that today. If you go to a swimming pool today, it's got a wave machine and slides. And then, of course, when I got home from school, I dropped off my stuff and went straight out to play. And unfortunately, it got dark after a while, and I wasn't allowed to stay out after that. But yeah, my childhood was so different to a child of today. And we won't even go there with my dad and his generation. Yes, an hour of stressful physical activity every day. And the fact that they're not getting that sets them up for a poor health in adulthood. Well, there was another one. Yes. This is incredible. Professional tennis players have 40% stronger bones in their racket arm. Because they're, stressing it and working it every day for hours upon end. That's how much influence physical activity has on your bone structure. The more physical activity, the harder you stress your skeleton, the stronger it becomes. That's incredible. Talking of incredible, our jaws have shrunk by approximately 6 to 7% since the invention of processed food. Not good. Not good. And then they talked about, you know, this is America, but of course, as they say, if America gets a cold, the rest of the world sneezes. Young adult dementia has increased 3 times since 2012. I've never heard of young adult dementia, so that's obviously coming across the Atlantic to us. Something to look forward to. Childhood cancers have gone up 79% in the last 10 years. 25% of men under 40 have erectile dysfunction. 77% of young Americans are not eligible for military service because they're fat or they use drugs. Not sure you're allowed to call people fat anymore, are you? It takes me a while to catch up. Autoimmune diseases are rising 13% per year. Heart disease, which is totally preventable and curable, kills 800,000 people a year in America. 75% of Americans are obese or overweight. 1 in 2 will have cancer. Well, that is the same in the UK. 1 in 36 children now in the West are autistic. In California, it's down to 1 in 22. Good old California leading the way. In 2000, it was 1 in 150. So it's increasing at an incredible rate. 50% of Americans are pre-diabetic or have type 2 diabetes. In 1950, it was 1%. That's all rather depressing. But the good news is, it doesn't have to be that way. If you choose good health and you take control of it and responsibility for it yourself, it doesn't have to be like that. But it's fascinating. I find all that fascinating. Anyway, let's get back to the allotment. Up this end of the plot, it's a mixed bag. I've got this mess to deal with. Obviously, this is the blueberry raised bed. And again, weeds. There's a raspberry cane in there. Don't know how that got in there. But there's a load of couch grass in there. It finds its way everywhere. So I'm going to have to, by hand, I've got to get in amongst those blueberry plants and pull out all of that muck and try and tidy it up. And then I've got some bags of ericaceous soil to top dress them with. So that's a job for today. I have to say, this Cavolo Nero is a very statuesque plant. And it's producing kale quicker than we can use it. It's an odd thing. You grow this stuff because you think you should, and then you don't know what to do with it all. And I've made a strategic error here. And that error is planting a fruit tree, an apple tree, Jonah Gold, in the asparagus bed. When you plant the tree in the winter, well, when I plant the tree in the winter, I fail to understand just how big asparagus plants become in the autumn. And so what's happening is these asparagus plants shoot up to about here, and they are the same height as the apple tree. And I think what's happening is the asparagus is preventing circulation of air through the tree. It's sort of swamping the tree, and I'm getting a lot of scab and disease on the apples. Apple trees, like all fruit trees, need lots of air to circulate to keep these diseases from accumulating. So I've made a mistake there. But, you know, learn from it. I won't make that mistake again. And in the future, apple and other fruit trees need to be planted. That's why we invented orchards. It's not rocket science, is it? Anyway, I've learned a lesson. Right, just got to sort that out now. Oh, where to begin? Well, it's taken a while, but it's done. It looks a lot neater, and I've weeded the paths as well. Right, the blueberries. Well, as usual with me, it's not perfect, but it's a lot clearer, and I've used the opportunity to cut out some of the oldest wood on each plant, which will encourage the growth of new shoots, which I can see in there already from last year, which will bear more fruit. So time well spent. Well, I know what's been missing from your life for the last 3 weeks. Some completely useless information. So without further ado, John Lennon and Paul McCartney both had cats called Jesus. The Beatles' classic Yesterday was originally entitled Scrambled Eggs. I'm a Poached Egg is a love song by George Gershwin. Albert Einstein claimed his second best idea, this is one for the fellas, was to boil his eggs in his soup, thus saving on washing up. The moon is shaped like an egg. It only looks round because the big end points towards the Earth. The coldest known place in the solar system is in a crater at the north pole of the moon. I'm not sure how to pronounce this, but it doesn't really matter. Oymyakon in Russia is the coldest inhabited place on Earth. Its only hotel has no hot water and an outside toilet. That's a hotel. Between 2010 and 2013, the London Fire Brigade rescued 18 children with their heads stuck in toilet seats. The 1978 chess final at Her Majesty's Prison Wormwood Scrubs was between Moore's murderer Ian Brady and disgraced MP John Stonehouse. And if you don't come from the UK and you don't know who Ian Brady is, look it up. He was a truly despicable, hideous human being, very closely related to Myra Hindley. In 1913, Hitler, Stalin, Trotsky, Tito, Freud, Jung and Wittgenstein, I don't know that one, were all living in Vienna. That'd have been a good night out, wouldn't it? Dublin, Glasgow, London, petroleum, coal, wax, go forth, stay and jump are all towns in Kentucky. The Irish pub furthest from Dublin is Waxy O'Shea's in Invercargill, New Zealand. There are 6 villages in France called Silly, 12 called Billy and 2 called Pratt. Doesn't sound very... I don't know if you can hear that, but there's a frog croaking in my pond. Is that a bullfrog? Is that... I don't know. Female giant jumping rats have 4 nipples, 2 in the armpits and 2 in the groin. Buzz is Arabic for nipple. Dad is Albanian for babysitter. Water pony is Afrikaans for jet ski. That's brilliant. 10,000 horses were killed at the Battle of Waterloo. Snickers bars are named after a horse owned by the Mars Company. Humans have 1 more bone in their bodies than horses. Human bone, you can see what they do here, there's a theme, isn't there? Human bone is 4 times stronger than concrete. Your brain cells live longer than any other cells in your body. You have taste receptors in your lungs. Hands evolved before arms. That's odd, isn't it? After a double hand transplant, there can't be many of them about, right-handed patients can become left-handed. Mothers over 40 are twice as likely to have left-handed children as women in their 20s. How peculiar. And I'll finish on this note. Until the early 20th century, left-handedness in a wife was grounds for divorce in Japan. Quite right too. I happen to be left-handed, so that stuff interests me. I've never ever in my life used a pair of scissors that fit my fingers. There's another useless information. Unfortunately, quite a few of those leeks weren't usable. However, that's still a lovely little crop on an autumn Sunday afternoon. I'll take that. Well, the fire's still on, and I've got my last cup of coffee. I'm going to dampen down the fire. It's mid-afternoon. It's a little bit awkward today because we've got a viewing of the house at 4:30 this afternoon, which is quite awkward, but you know, when it's the first couple of weeks of a house being on the market, you don't want to turn down a viewing. So I think Cheryl's coming up here in an hour or two just to be out of the way. I mean, it could be dark by about 4:30. Anyway, it's another viewing, so fingers crossed. And I'm just going to sit up here and read a kitchen garden magazine and just stay out the way. But I'm finished for the day. I've had enough. I'm quite pleased with what I've achieved. My only problem is the problem I have every year. I have more beds than I have leaf mould or compost to top dress them with. I mean, I've always got the manure up there, but it's very heavy and it's lumpy. But it's full of goodness. So when I can muster up the energy, I shall start wheelbarrowing in the organic cow muck and put on the beds that I haven't got leaf mould and compost for. So anyway, thanks if you've made it this far. You're a trooper. I'm not sure I'll be around next weekend. More house viewings and family events. Yeah, I probably won't be here next weekend, but I should be here the weekend after. Of course, if the unthinkable was to happen and the house was to sell, it would be all systems go on that front. So you'll just have to keep your eye out, and I'll be around when I can be. So whatever is going on in your lives, I hope it's all going to plan. Fingers crossed. And I'll see you when I see you. Look after yourselves. Take care. Bye for now.